In January of 1988, the Supreme Court handed down their decision on the landmark case Hazelwood School District versus Kuhlmeier, ruling in favor of the school. The case disputed the freedom of student expression in the case of a school-sponsored newspaper, which contained material the principal felt was explicit for the student body audience, resulting in the deletion of 2 pages of the student publication, The Spectrum. In 2009, when Principal Tom Blakely took the job at Sentinel High School, prior review was not a consistent practice within the Missoula County Public School District.
Well, I think it was, there's always been a policy that goes on the books. It's different from the operating procedures of a principal. I took this job in 2009 and came in and had a way of doing things. I'd been a principal for 9 years before, had a good working relationship with the students that ran the school paper in my previous school. I did insist that I read the paper, and that had not been practiced before. And initially, there wasn't any relationship between myself and the journalism kids or the journalism teacher.
Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeier was compared to the decision of Tinker versus Des Moines Independent, in which student expression was upheld. From the time the decision was released, the Supreme Court had to change the way all cases dealing with student press rights were determined. This diagram became the way courts would determine if a particular act of censorship by school officials is legally permissible, and also a way to decide if a case was held to the Hazelwood standard in which student expression can be censored because of the link to the school, or to the Tinker standard, in which student expression cannot be censored unless it causes a disruption in school activities or the rights of others. The Hellgate Lance across town became somewhat notorious for publishing scandalous content, bringing prior review into light in MCPS, and Blakely was determined to make sure a trusting relationship with the journalism department was made through the use of prior review.
So that initial insistence upon reading the paper was perceived as heavy-handed. It was perceived as, well, is he going to tell us what we can write, what we can't write? So no knowledge, no background, no trust. And it took a while before what they saw as my comments about what they were writing was actually positive. I wasn't trying to limit what they could write. I wasn't trying to limit the topics that they could go see. I think actually journalism students, yourself included, have been surprised sometimes at what I do allow.
The first characteristic on the diagram looks at the school sponsorship of the paper. In the case of the 100-year-old Sentinel Kona, which got its name from the Salish word for bitterroot as suggested by artist E.S. Paxson in 1913, it clearly received its name from its home school. Next, the publication must be part of the school curriculum. The first actual class dedicated to the production of the Sentinel Kona was created in the 1950s. Prior to this, it was an extracurricular activity. Its purpose at the time of its creation was to keep alumni informed about the happenings at Missoula County High School, and eventually became more useful in the actual teaching of journalism as part of the district syllabus through the process of making a newspaper once Missoula County High School split into Hellgate and Sentinel. The standard to which a case is held is then determined by the status of forum of the publication. The Sentinel Kona, though completely student-run, still requires the attention of advisors and can therefore not be officially labeled as a forum for student expression. This means that the Sentinel Kona is under Hazelwood and censorship is permitted. The problem with prior review is that many media advisors tend to feel as though they are not being trusted to practice true journalism. Furthermore, students feel it's an invasion upon their First Amendment rights.
I don't think that students have the same First Amendment rights. I think that students are looked at a lot more and under a lot more pressure and responsibility. I mean, not necessarily responsibility, because everyone has a certain amount of responsibility, but they have more pressure to like get things right and to not step out of their boundaries, I guess. Like, they have more reason to get in trouble just because they are teenagers. So I think that it is different for kids in high school and younger kids than it would be for an adult. And I think that the situations get treated differently because of our age. And you should have more freedom than I think the school system provides us as far as the First Amendment goes.
We could talk about it as being censorship. We could talk about it as being heavy-handed or direction, but we could also talk about it as being a learning opportunity.
Despite being under prior review, Sentinel has come a long way from its days of being routinely reviewed before sending the paper to press when Blakely first started as principal.
I think I have a real good relationship with the journalism kids. I enjoy reading their work. I rarely, if ever, get in the middle of an opportunity. I think that they have, the culture in our journalism department is to pay attention to the audience. My biggest point with talking to the journalism students has been about your audience and the fact that while your classmates read the paper, so do your parents, so do your grandparents, so does the community. It is a medium that reaches a lot of people. And so you don't just write to your friends. Your Facebook page may be set up for just your friends, but when you start to think about, oh, my pastor can read this, or oh, my grandmother can read this, then each of us in turn tends to have a little bit of a different view on what we then want to publish. So it doesn't have to come from me anymore. It's already there. The students in the journalism department are very responsible. They see the big picture, and they've been awarded for it. It's not only my message, it's the message from PBS, Wall Street Journal, from the awards that you've gotten from the University of Montana. They see the power of your writing, and they wouldn't see that if what you were writing was offensive. It wouldn't be there. And I think the students have seen the power of walking that path. There's times for that biting editorial. There's a time for that critical news article. But you have to give all sides their due. It's the responsibility piece. It's how you get the job in the business. Nobody's ever going to hire that biting author that is truly one-sided. That's not what sells papers. There's a lot of times now, I used to read the whole paper, every article, and now it's become one of the journalism kids seek me out when they think that there might be something controversial. I know that the news piece that they did on the superintendent's raise was something that the journalism kids were a little nervous about, that probably thought that I might put a stop to. But actually, it's something I supported in the essence of fair journalism. We talked about making sure that we had both sides of the issue, and a very well done piece and award-winning piece, right? And again, I think that there's been times when they've brought me an article that they thought was particularly over the top, and I approved it. I might have some tweaks to how you say this or how this comes across, and I always want to make sure that the rights of individuals are observed. We don't want to say something about somebody without giving them an opportunity to be able to contradict it or to comment on it. I think it's been a great working relationship.
I mean, I think it's pretty cool that we don't have to show Blakely all of our stuff before we send it in because he trusts that we will make good decisions with what we have. So